Welcome, everyone. My name is Tony Cockmo, president of the DFWBIM Infrastructure User Group and also president of CivilCAD Learning Solutions. And today's guest is Matt Wunch from Autodesk. Matt, I'd like to introduce yourself and what we're going to be covering over today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much, Tony. I'm going to stay off of camera just to reduce the bandwidth because things have been running a little slow here. But my name is Matt Wunch. I am a solutions engineer here at Autodesk. And if you're wondering what a solutions engineer is or does, basically create different solutions between all the different applications, try to really maximize and optimize workflows. Been with Autodesk coming up on 3 years. My first intro, to kind of give you a little glimpse into just how old I am. My first intro into the world of Autodesk and AutoCAD was AutoCAD R10 back in 1992, my junior year of high school. So I'll let you do some simple math and kind of go backwards and get a sense of just how old I am. So I've been in the industry for about 30-ish years, 3 decades, if you want to look at it that way. But yeah, that's kind of me in a nutshell. You know, kind of think of me as like a jack of all trades when it comes to all the different solutions and how everything can talk to each other.
So yeah, if you want to start your sharing your screen, I enabled it. That way, if you want to pull up your files.
All right, so you should all be seeing the title slide, right?
So can everybody see the title slide? Just give us a thumbs up.
It looks like we got more attendees since I had to bail.
You come back on.
All right, cool. So I'm actually going to blow through probably, a couple of these slides just because of the time already lost. I do need to give a shout out and all the credit for this presentation to my colleague, Sam McAllister. He is located in Australia, covers the APAC region. He actually presented this same presentation a couple weeks ago, but I'm sure most, if not all of us, missed it because I believe it was like around 1 a.m. Eastern Standard Time because of the time zone difference between here and Australia. All right, so yes, a couple thumbs up in the chat, sweet. Feel free to interrupt if you have any questions, but just kind of zipping through this, right? So we're going to be covering some of the core AEC tools and of course Twinmotion. Everyone, it's labeled as Twinmotion for Revit, but it is not just for Revit. It can absolutely be used for those infrastructure workflows. So we're going to take a look at INFRAWORKS, models saved in the construction cloud inside of Docs, how we can connect with Revit, and take a quick look at 3ds Max and Forma as well. All right, so again, taking a look at creating that model using Model Builder and INFRAWORKS, pushing that to Docs, incorporating our Revit file, and then taking all of this stuff to Twinmotion. Had a couple videos from the product manager, Ara, for INFRAWORKS. I think maybe we'll skip over these just in the interest of time, but basically, these kind of go through some of the features, some of the capabilities, like keeping all of your content and all of your custom bridge content in the cloud inside of Docs, pulling those into your INFRAWORKS models, creating the templates for your bridges and the structures, etc. Another one, actually we'll skip to this one. This one's actually pretty cool. Just want to touch on this one real quick, but bridges are not just for bridges. So in this video here, Ara is using a bridge inside of INFRAWORKS, but to create a retaining wall, right? So it's not just the piers, the abutments, the girders, all that stuff, which of course can absolutely be incorporated, but also, for retaining walls as well. And just kind of skip ahead here, right? So looking at the finished product there with all the different panels for that retaining wall, which is actually a road as well, right? So it's component road, but it is a bridge, but it is customized to for the use of retaining walls.
That's being creative there, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
I did retaining walls with a curb component road. A component curb and made it into a wall.
Oh, so you just kind of extruded it, elevated it?
Yeah.
Basically, right. Yeah, so this is another bridge video, but looking at how we can add more detail in there. So the bracing between the girders, and just being able to take all that information, or all that data and 3D models, whether it's created in Inventor or Revit. So Revit capabilities now, creating those families, pulling them into INFRAWORKS, and taking that bridge model, running it through structural analysis, through structural bridge design, and pushing that model to Revit for all of your detailed contract documents, rebar, etc. And of course, being able to go round trip with all this information. So that kind of skims through those videos. Now back to the actual, the really cool stuff here, right? So this particular project is kind of reimagining a bridge and a local community in Sydney, Australia. Again, my colleague Sam McAllister created this, and you would have thought he would be able to spell Australia correct, left out the I there. But this particular location, there's an estimated 75,000 vehicles that pass over this bridge daily. And when the bridge is elevated for ships to go underneath, there's a 20 to 30 minute delay, causing massive gridlock, massive congestion. So the idea here is to use the design tools in INFRAWORKS to develop a preliminary design. Revit will be used to create a train station, and we'll put everything into Twinmotion to visualize the proposed project, right? So we're going to have a new bridge, a higher bridge, to be able to accommodate boats going underneath without having to raise that bridge, and a tunnel as well, so as to not disturb the existing community around the area here. And I see something in the chat. Okay, it's just Tony and his spelling capabilities there. All right. All right, so looking at that bridge, right? So we, talked about the ability to get larger boats under there, right? So right now it's low profile, low height, only accommodates smaller boats, and of course narrow lanes. So if a vehicle happens to break down, that's certainly going to cause issues as well with backup and congestion. Right, so looking at Model Builder with INFRAWORKS, this will leverage the OpenStreetMaps data. It's all free data. There is no cloud token consumption for this, so you can create as many projects as you want. You can either kind of pan and zoom to the location that you want, provide a shapefile to define the project limits. And when you do all this, give your project a name, of course, set the coordinates correctly so we know exactly where in the world our project is located. Once the model is created, you're going to get an email saying it's available. It's going to pop up as a blank tile inside of INFRAWORKS. From there, you can choose to save it locally or save it to the construction cloud. As you can see here, you've got two different options. You got docs and local. So we're going to keep everything in the cloud. That way everyone has access to it anytime, anywhere, right? So one thing to point out, because this is an Australian model, and Sam imported a country kit in here. When I tried to open this model, being stateside here in Connecticut, I didn't have the Australian country kit installed, so I was not actually able to open that model until I installed that country kit. Kind of backwards in terms of the notification, right? So it went through the entire process of trying to open the model before it said, hey, you don't have the country kit installed. If you do need that country kit, you can certainly get that from your manage.autodesk.com account page, download, install, whatever, as well as any other product updates for infrastructure part editors or anything as it relates to that model. Right, so now we've got our INFRAWORKS model here. Got our country kit installed. You can see all the different data sources or the model types that we have. So looking at the Model Explorer, we can turn things on, we can turn things off, we can lock those different layers. In a situation like this, you may want to lock some of those layers and then just delete everything else, right? So part of this, you're going to see Sam, essentially wipe out that model because we don't need all that extra information, such as the water, for example. Those water areas, we can get rid of them. It's just going to make that model lighter, easier to use, and of course, easier on the cloud side as well. So being able to quickly pull up that model to visualize, and you can see here he's selecting the entire model after having locked a couple things. So just leaving really kind of a blank slate, right? So just the terrain imagery that you see from Bing Maps there. That's the other thing I didn't mention, right? So it did mention OpenStreetMaps, right? So that's going to be your roadways, your buildings, railways, water areas, things of that nature. The terrain, depending on where you are in the world, but if you're in the States, it's going to be USGS data. Not super detailed, but you can absolutely augment that with more refined, detailed survey data, whether it's point clouds or DEMs, DTMs, things like that. All right, so we're just looking at creating the bringing in some near map imagery to get a more high res image. So near map is one of the Autodesk partners. They that imagery, mesh files, they offer a couple other file formats as well. Those can be pulled into INFRAWORKS, Civil 3D. Right, so if you're working internationally, right, that information will be available pretty much anywhere, right? So whether it's stateside or Australia, as we saw here, and then syncing that model, syncing those changes back up to the construction cloud, making sure the latest and greatest is always up there for you to view. And remember, I mentioned kind of wiping things out to make it lighter, faster, more responsive, right? So that's exactly what's going to happen there with the web viewer. I mentioned near map, right? So being able to pull in not just imagery, but 3D mesh content as well. I believe they also have point clouds, FBX, OBJ, I think some shapefile data as well that you can extract from their site. Just one of many data providers that we can incorporate into either INFRAWORKS, Civil 3D to really kind of start to build out that design intent model. So component roads, this is the core of bridge work, and you can see that little kangaroo crossing sign. Again, this is all Australia, but everything applies stateside as well. We're just going to be driving on the other side of the road, that's all. So, with most Autodesk products, typically going to start on the left side of the ribbon and move to the right. You can see some of those road styles there, those component roads. Right, so we're going to work with the component road, and there's a couple different ways of creating it, but we're just going to kind of pick points along the road. You can certainly import GIS shapefile, maybe it's the center line, the roadway center line alignment. You could pull that in and assign that to a component road style. But here we're just going to kind of pick points along that road. Again, sketching out this reimagined bridge and tunnel for this particular community here in Sydney. And you can see we've got our points here, and right off the bat, may not look the most not the prettiest, right? It's still pretty sharp turns there, right? So we can convert those different pick points to different curve styles, and of course all that content that builds up that component road, the chain link fence, the light poles, right? So it's built of all those different components. They were taking a look at actually starting to clean up those component roads. Whether we do it to all these different points, we can certainly remove points if we've added too many. You can do it freehand, as you saw just a moment ago, kind of dragging the end, the tangents of the curve there. You can certainly input direct values inside of any of these boxes here, these cells. So getting a more precise, more accurate design layout. Likewise, we can do the same thing inside of a profile view as well. saw there was something in the chat. Do you need a license for Nearmap? Yes, you do, Michelle. You do need a Nearmap license to access and download their data. There's also plenty of free data as well out there. You know, towns, counties have a lot of GIS data available. You know, Tony can certainly point you in some directions for, I know he's pulled a lot of GIS data for his projects. But yeah, there's a lot of free stuff out there as well, you know, including LiDAR data as well. So you're not just limited to Nearmap, but they do offer a lot of up-to-date high-res imagery. All right, so moving forward, taking a look at the bridge, right? So we've created that component road, which basically is just lying on the terrain here, on the ground. And did my video stop? There we go. All right, so we've got our component road, and remember, working left to right in that ribbon, that toolbar, we're going to start to pick our 2 points for that bridge. Just like with the curves, you can enter exact stations, just type in those values, modify it as needed, or you can freehand it and always modify it after the fact as well. But we can see we've got those piers, we've got those abutments, we've got the girders, everything starting to kind of take shape, take form here. Can also modify things inside of a section or profile view. So, starting to take a look at the engineering side of things as well, see how those vertical curves look. And just like we were modifying the horizontal curves earlier, you can do the exact same thing. So there's that profile view. So instead of the horizontal curves, you can modify the vertical curves. And of course, enter values into any of these cells to get really exact, or just kind of free forming like Sam is showing here. A lot of flexibility and also a lot of precision at the same time. And as you modify those values, whether it's curves, pull the bridge up, you can see in that 3D view, everything adjusted at the same time. Keep in mind, the more details you have in that bridge, of course, the longer it's going to take to regenerate. But certainly a lot faster than doing everything manually by hand. All right, so that just goes through a little bit more of the profile view and editing that bridge. All right, so tunnels are similar to the bridge. So we're going to pick a couple points, again, moving left to right on that ribbon, picking the points where we want to begin that tunnel and end the tunnel. And by default, that tunnel is essentially going to be sitting on the grade. So the bottom of that tunnel will be at whatever the finished grade is of that roadway. As you'll see here in a moment, it'll pop up. But just like with the bridge, you can specify that start station, end station, get really, really precise with it, or just freeform it. Similar to the bridge components, there are a lot of components for tunnels as well. So if you want a D shape, you want a round with other multiple lanes, for example, you can specify those. You can also create those as custom content, whether it's Inventor or Revit. Create that custom bridge shape that you want. And we can see here that component road runs right through that tunnel. So keep maintaining the chain link fence, the sidewalk lanes, as well as everything else. But we do need to get that tunnel down, right? So just like we saw earlier with the bridge in the profile view, modify that tunnel in a profile view, and that's going to help drop it down, right? So that's going to be how you actually kind of reset or recess that tunnel, bury it under the ground. And because the tunnel is too far out, the opening of that tunnel, we're just going to kind of pull it back to where that terrain kind of flattens out right before the bridge. So we've got our tunnel sticking out of the hillside there. So very simple workflow, very similar to the bridge. We're just looking at tunnels, right? So components, we kind of touched on this earlier with some of those videos that Ara showed, or that Ara had created, the product manager. Again, create that custom content, whether it's Revit, Inventor, whatever you're most familiar with. Pull that into your model. You create that as a template, if you will. So if you have a particular bridge style that uses the same piers, for example, create that as a template, so you're not having to redo this process all the time. You can apply that particular pier style to one pier, the entire group. So, makes modifications very simple. Same thing goes with girders, for example. If you want to change the girder style, you can apply it to just that section of the bridge, or you can apply it to all the girders. So very easy, very fast way of modifying those components.
Matt, real quick question. So
Yes, sir.
You're pulling these parts from the Autodesk Construction Cloud. Is there any benefits of that over like Docs or the BIM 360?
Well, the Construction Cloud is Docs, right? So
okay,
it's just,
okay.
To keep everyone on their toes and
I get the questions like that all the time. Like,
try to make sure we're all following along, right? So yeah, Docs is Construction Cloud. Construction Cloud as a whole is Docs. It's BIM Collaborate Pro. It's Build. It's Takeoff. It's sort of like all these modules built on top of it, but it's that end-to-end solution or end-to-end platform for design and construction projects, right? So go from pre-design all the way through to construction. Everything just flows right through. But yeah, I've got a slide I can show if we have time. But yeah, Docs. They're kind of interchangeable, Docs and Construction Cloud. I've seen it either way, but yeah, it's Construction Cloud first, and then Docs kind of sits on top of that. Super confusing, I know, because we always change the names of things. BIM 360 Teams, then BIM 360 Next Gen, and then Docs and Construction Cloud. So
yep.
All right, so moving along, content. Again, sign is on the left-hand side of the road. This is Sydney, Australia, but the rules apply, right? We can do the content regardless of where you are in the world. So it's not just a localized solution. All right, so taking a look at this component road here, we wanted to add some components to this. We can modify existing components, based on that particular style. In this case, we're pulling back the, I believe it's the fencing, that chain link fence there, because we don't want to go all the way through the tunnel. All right, so you can see it. You can see it kind of stopping right before the tunnel there. So you do the same thing on the other side, kind of clean things up. So again, we don't need the tunnel. We don't need the fencing to go all the way through the tunnel because we've got the tunnel barrier or tunnel walls as a barrier. Let's say we want to add, I think he's going to add, I'm drawing a blank, Jersey barriers, right? So we can add those barriers along the center line of the road here. And what you're going to see, if we get to it, I'm just going to let it play, but by default, it comes in with a predefined spacing. You can modify that spacing, get them tighter, further apart, depending on your particular need. So we're looking at, I think, 3.1 meters here spacing. When we take a look at a part of the road that has a vertical curve, you'll see that right here, right? So the barriers want to stay horizontal by default, but if you turn on tilting, that's going to basically kind of force them to follow that vertical curve of your roadway. So giving it a, certainly a more realistic look to things without having to do, a lot of manual rotation. And of course, as the road changes, the barriers are going to follow that vertical curve as well. On the right-hand side, we're adding or increasing the width of a cycle lane, right? So we want to be able to accommodate cyclists as they're going over this bridge back and forth through the tunnel. And with this, we can also place decorations. So we'll be placing a bike cycle path direction decal, and basically kind of think of it as like a sticker just laying right on the cycle lane there. And just like everything else, we can modify the offset, the rotation, so you can see that that arrow, we can see the little cycle image there, right? So getting everything just as we want it to appear in the model. Very simple, very easy. It's just gonna kind of follow the entire cycle lane all the way through the tunnel to the other side. All right, so I did mention the the country kits, right? So we've got that information here. I'm going to kind of skip over this, but again, just want to point out, if you are working internationally and someone has installed a country kit, you are going to have to install it as well. Otherwise, you won't be able to open that model. It works a little bit different than just throwing in your own content, creating your own custom JSON libraries, which, if you do that, you can open up any model. But for some reason with country kits, you have to have that installed in order to actually open that model. Wanted to touch on Forma and Revit real quick. So on May 8th, we released Forma, which can help you with some of that preliminary design in Revit. And if you ever struggled with shared coordinates in Revit, Forma can certainly help with that, because Forma is based on those real world locations. So when you send your Forma design to Revit, Revit will automatically pick up the geographic location of the Forma model. So as you can see in the Revit location and site dialog box, we've got the lat long, which I don't know how easy it is to see on your end, but we also have that same lat long inside of Twinmotion as well. Right, so being able to get really accurate with regards to location, sun, shadows, etc., inside of your visualization. All right, so looking at Forma real quick here. So similar to INFRAWORKS, Forma uses OpenStreetMap data as well. So in this short example, starting off in Forma, that same site inside or in Sydney, Australia, sketching up the train station that's going to run alongside of our roadway. All right, we can send that design model to Revit. Inside of Revit, we're going to get the terrain. We're going to get, of course, that geographic location, like I mentioned earlier, get the aerial imagery as well. So really starting to see that site sort of in context, but inside of Revit. So certainly speeds up the process of defining those shared coordinates. You can see that lat long, northern, easting, rotation, all that information right from the Forma model, pulled directly into Revit. Now, shameless plug, I am doing a hands-on lab at AU this year, shared coordinates in 30 minutes or less. The lab is 90 minutes long, so don't let the name and the time slot fool you. But we'll be talking about all the pitfalls and things to watch out for, the gotchas and the ahas to be aware of. Going to be using the new Revit 24 Snowden Towers data set, pulling that into INFRAWORKS, Civil 3D, recap, everything back and forth. So if you're going to AU and you've got 90 minutes to kill and you want to learn how to do these shared coordinates, get your hands on it, get down and dirty in the workflows, be sure to check out my lab there. All right, now the cool stuff, right? So we've done all that design inside of INFRAWORKS. We've pushed everything from Revit. When does the AU course catalog come out? Don't quote me on it, but I believe it's the end of August that course selection goes live. You should be seeing something, I think, beginning of August in terms of what courses are available. So a little bit of a lag there between when you can actually see the courses and then when you can actually register for those courses. All right, so we've got our model, our design all modeled up inside our INFRAWORKS. We need to push that out to something that Twinmotion can read. DAE seems to work really, really well. It's a smaller file type, but you can also push out FBX or OBJ from INFRAWORKS. That'll work just as well. Remember, it's not just Twinmotion for Revit. We can also use it for those infrastructure projects. Mentioned I was going to touch on 3ds Max real quick. Here it is, right? So if you want your terrain to be lighter, or you can kind of reduce the count. Or if you want to take it the flip side and you want it smoother, right, you can do that inside of 3ds Max as well. Remember, all that terrain data is going to be based on, at least here in the States, it's going to be based on USGS data. Not super accurate. It's more of a interpolated rolling terrain. Right, so you may want to smooth it out. You may want to reduce the poly count. Right, 3ds Max is where you would do that. All right, the cool stuff. Twinmotion again. All the credit goes to Sam McAllister for creating the videos and the content here. We have a video. What do we got going on? There we go. All right. So just kind of walks you through that process of exporting your INFRAWORKS model to an FBX, or I think a DAE in this case. So nothing really crucial here. What version of Twinmotion are you using? We are using the latest, the 23.1, the new one that came out. Something to be aware of with Twinmotion, if you are using it, it is a hefty download. It's like 17 gigs alone just for Twinmotion. So, keep that in mind when downloading it, extracting it, installing it. You're going to need a lot of space. But yeah, this is the new version of Twinmotion. If you've ever used it, or if you've never used it before, it is super cool. You can really get lost in here, just killing time, playing with things, adjusting the lighting. There's a lot of new templates in here. If your INFRAWORKS model changes, or we can see that INFRAWORKS model in here. If that INFRAWORKS model changes, you can always kick it out to a DAE again, or FBX, and then just reload it or resync it. So you don't have to go through the whole process of removing it, reloading it, adding it back in. It's very simple to update your design changes. I mentioned, some of those templates, some of those updates. We've got a lot of cool HDRI lighting in here, so you don't have to mess around with all the different settings, the exposure, the color grading, things like that. You just click on one of those templates at the bottom. It's going to load in everything for you. And my video stopped. I was wondering why I wasn't moving. Right, so you click on one of those templates, it drastically changes the appearance of your model. Super easy, super simple to do. Gives it a whole new artistic look and feel. And because we're dealing with that HDRI, that dome, we can spin that thing around. So if we really wanted to get fancy and artsy with what everything looks like, you can certainly tweak this to your heart's content. There's a lot of control over what you can do in here. And I think we're going to see in just a moment here, right? So spinning around that dome, and you can see the shadows automatically updating because of the light source rotating around. So a lot of cool things you can do. Super easy, super simple to do it. All right, tons of materials I keep stopping. Tons of materials as well. Give your model, that realistic look that you're going for. If you have an Epic Games account, you can log in and get access to even more materials, even more 3D content. Mega scans give your model a huge sense of realism. All right, so taking a look at the roadway here, for example, dropping on some busted up pavement. Once we get to it here, and we'll see, we can adjust the scale of things to really get it that, give it that sense or sense of scale, sense of detail, level of detail that you're looking for specifically, right? So you can see those, worn pavement lines, and of course, our INFRAWORKS model pavement lines, we can turn those off, right? So just, a lot of control over how real this looks, and you can see how easy it is as well. How we doing on time? 14 minutes. All right, I can run a little long if I need to.
Yeah, doing good.
All right, this one's pretty cool. The light fixture. All right, so There's tons of different lighting in here. So by default, that material on that light is glass, of course. But there are some neon lights inside of Twinmotion. When you throw that on there, it's automatically going to apply to all those glass materials of all the different light fixtures. And you can see there's the flashing, there's like a slow dim. You can adjust the color, the brightness, tons of control over that. And you can kind of see all the other lights have that same. Video is not working. Are you seeing the video, Tony? Anyone?
Yeah, I can see the video.
All right, so it looks like Victor's got some slowness now. All right, so it's not just me. That's good.
Can anybody else see the video?
It had. Let me go to the next one.
Video's fine over there. Okay,
right.
Eric says fine.
All right, we got another one playing here. Hopefully you're seeing that come across now. All right, so we talked about materials. We can certainly add that to enhance your model. Vegetation, super simple. There's a couple types. There's scattered, which will scatter plants, vegetation all over the entire model. Probably not what we want, especially if we're looking at the water area. But painting, however, gives you much more control over where content is added. You can add, you can see here, different types of trees. You can also add multiple of the same tree, but also vary their height, their age, to get a really, really realistic representation of some of the content or some of the vegetation. We can also add rocks and grasses to really build that out. But, essentially you're just going to paint over that area, adjust the size of that paintbrush, that sphere. If you happen to get, vegetation on your tunnel there, there's an erase feature, and it will erase just the bits and pieces that you brush over. So a lot of control over what is added and what is removed. Vehicle paths are super cool as well, right? So we want vehicles rolling over this bridge. Neat little tip here: if you isolate that bridge, that roadway element, it's going to be a lot easier to sketch your animation path, right? So because we are in Sydney, Australia, it stopped again. Every time I touch my zoom controls, the video stops. All right, so because we're in Sydney, we want that flow of traffic to go the opposite direction, right? So you have complete control over which way the direction of traffic flows, how dense that traffic is, of course, the speed, things of that nature. So you don't have to, recreate things just to make a modification, right? So here we are, we're flowing the opposite direction here because we are in Sydney again. So a lot of control. When we slow it down, we can actually see people inside of those vehicles, right? So lots of detail to that content. There is, of course, construction specific content, which is also animated. So if we throw in a mixer, I think Sam pulls in a bulldozer as well, right? So just that little bit of movement there just gives it a lot more realism as opposed to just a static vehicle. And of course, can't have construction vehicles without construction workers. Huge benefit to this is you don't have to learn character rigging inside of 3ds Max to animate your characters. You can change the color of their vests, their outfits, depending on what type of character you bring in. Their animations here, you got this dude laying down, you got him, well, now he's dancing, right? So you want to have fun, you've got plenty of tools and options here, and like I said, you can really get lost in this just playing around with it. Once you get the hang of navigating and the controls, it's super fun to mess around with. Custom animation paths, right? So we've got our bridge. Well, we want to sketch a path and throw a boat in there, right? We want to make sure our sailboat can pass underneath. So after adding some water materials, we've got that realistic water, we've got the reflections of the clouds. when you sketch a custom animation path, you're going to have basically like a default box, kind of like the default 3D asset that we see in INFRAWORKS at times. You can see it kind of moving around there on the left, right? So we can swap that block out with custom content. So it can be a boat, it can be a different kind of car, it'll be a train later, right? So just building that out to whatever content you need, really gives you that freedom and flexibility to create whatever you're looking for, right? And we can see that boat just kind of skimming along, and of course it is too high, right? So you can change the offset, kind of sink it down in the water like we see there, right? So tons of flexibility, and we see our boat just doesn't quite make it through, right? So we can go back to INFRAWORKS, make some adjustments if we need to, and again push that back to Twinmotion to update that model.
So I got a question, Matt. How well is it Twinmotion handle trees that you've already laid out in INFRAWORKS? Does it even recognize those trees, or are you going to just replant the trees with its own version of trees? And
yeah, I wouldn't even bother with the INFRAWORKS trees.
Yeah.
When you bring them into Twinmotion, they're essentially going to come in as a whole bunch of meshes, right? So you're going to have, I think, 2 or 3 different meshes for the leaves. There'll be another mesh for the tree trunk itself. So
what's a good method of, let's say you've got something in 2D CAD, like blocks or circles, would that be faster than have to manually go and place it in Twinmotion to bring it in as a group of blocks or circles or something? If you got a big giant like development,
right, yeah,
you're trying to save time having to go manually place, a certain location trees. And I know you can group trees in Twinmotion, but if you want individual trees at certain spots, for the landscape architect, what would be the quickest way to bring that in at one time? Export it out as just some kind of block in AutoCAD or Civil 3D, and then you can bring it in and it just converts into a generic tree.
There's a model replace capability inside of Twinmotion. So let's say we had a bunch of objects, and maybe the fencing or the light poles, and we wanted to swap those out with something else, because the light pole or the truck is a good example. The entire truck is highlighted, so the truck is a single object versus that tree from INFRAWORKS, potentially being broken down in a bunch of meshes. But you can swap out, say you've got a bunch of these trucks in here and you want to swap it out for a motorcycle. There is that capability, that functionality. So you can certainly do that. That would be a good way. And then within INFRAWORKS, instead of using the INFRAWORKS trees, maybe use some sort of generic object. I don't know. I'd have to think about that one a little bit more. But there is that capability of swapping out one 3D model or a bunch of 3D models for another one, right? So you could have those trees all right in those specific locations, because that's where we want them. We don't want to do a painting. We want to have them exactly where they are. Maybe they're like dead center of planters or something like that.
Yeah,
right?
you want to match exactly what the preliminary landscape architect has designed. Michelle did ask, can you export it back into INFRAWORKS model trees? And
I don't believe so. There's videos, there's static images, there's VR. Don't believe we can export this directly back to INFRAWORKS.
But no, specifically the trees. So if you export that tree as a DAE file or FBX file, what would INFRAWORKS treat it as?
It's a good question. I mean, you might be able to drill into the library here and maybe pull out one of those trees and export it as a DAE or something like that, and then bring that into INFRAWORKS as sort of custom content.
Have you ever went to textures.com and try to use some of their materials and stuff?
I haven't, but when it comes to materials, I will say don't use anything that is not a seamless texture.
Yeah.
So seamless, won't give you those repeating lines,
Yeah, I
make it
know
look like
exactly what you're talking about, especially if
right,
you're trying to do grass and InfraWorks. And
right. Yeah, you get squares
you
all
can
over
see
the
a
place.
grid
Yeah,
line.
exactly.
Um,
Yeah. But yeah, so new capability inside of Twinmotion is gravity and collision. And you can see as we're moving this truck around, it's kind of attaching to different parts of that model, kind of taking it to the extreme. We can pull it up there and just let it drop, and we'll see how everything collides, based on the gravity. But that's really not the intent of this particular, or this part of the presentation. Just kind of showing some of the capabilities there. We got this one just flying around here. But what we want to do though is take advantage of that, because as you place that content, looking at it on this portion of the road, it's got a little bit of a vertical curve to it. So it's attaching based on that, call it insertion point, right? And of course the back wheels are raised up, but if you hit that collision, just going to drop it down nice and flat. Simple, easy way to get your model aligned with that vertical curve. Yeah, so Vince has he used solid cylinders in place of landscape trees and replaced them with trees or shrubs in Twinmotion. So, just like I was talking about, right? So being able to easily swap out all that information, or one model for another type of model.
yeah.
Yeah. Starting to put the whole visualization together, right? We've got our custom train. We've got people loitering around waiting for the train or whatever. Creating videos in Twinmotion is actually kind of similar to INFRAWORKS, if you've ever done that. So you basically just create keyframes, specify some of the options like the time between keyframes. What you're looking at here, just want to jump back real quick. If your machine is not heavy duty, not a high-end, gaming type machine, you want to kick down some of those values, make Twinmotion run a little bit better. It's not to say that you can't use Twinmotion, you just need to tweak some of those values there. But creating videos in Twinmotion is very similar to creating them in INFRAWORKS. You're going to create a keyframe from one point to another, and it's automatically going to stitch things together, and you can specify the time between keyframes. You can modify, add intermediate keyframes if you needed to, throw something in between here. You can certainly do that, and you can see how it's just passing along, just smoothly moving from one keyframe to another. Again, if you want to modify things, you can certainly do that. Add additional keyframes, like I mentioned, split things up. I would recommend, if you're going to create sort of like an overall, longer video than just, a couple seconds here, create individual smaller videos and then put them together in something like Camtasia or whatever your video editor of choice is. You can certainly do that. Camera along a path, I don't believe so. I believe it's all just keyframes. Thanks, Christian. Thanks for showing up. You are recording this, right, Tony?
Yes.
So you send the recording out to everyone? Cool.
Yes.
Cool. All right, so kind of putting it all together here, and I'm just gonna mute it on my end so I don't hear the music playing, but you can see what Sam did. He's got the traffic backed up because of construction on one side. He's got the vehicles rolling along on the other side, doing these really dramatic shots. Again, just keyframes from point A to point B to point C, doing a little fade in there. Wanted to pause real quick here and actually kind of jump back. Right, we can see that lighting on our light posts. The vehicles as well, those lights are going to turn on or off depending on time of day. You can have them set up to do that. So as it gets darker, those vehicle lights are going to come on, the street lights are going to come on. So when you're doing a video that goes from, say afternoon to dusk or evening, you're going to see all those changes take place. Also, if the video happens to look a little blurry, there is a motion blur option, so you can turn that on or off. And actually, we'll see some of that motion blur as we go through some of the trees a little bit later. But heading into the tunnel there, you can see some of that motion blur here as well, right? Things look a little bit fuzzy, a little bit blurry. You turn that off and you're going to have just a constant crisp, clean video. And I'm sure this is looking a little choppy because Zoom and videos don't always play nice together. Right, and you can see some of that motion blur as we rise up through the trees as well.
Have you ever tried to, I don't know if you played around, y'all's team played around, take the traffic impact analysis that was provided and try to recreate that animation in Twinmotion per the numbers?
Oh, like in from INFRAWORKS,
from INFRAWORKS, or even from another
analysis
party, and you say, hey, we know how much traffic is coming down the road per minute, the volume of traffic, try to reproduce that in Twinmotion.
I've heard there's a way of importing the, I think it's a ANIM file into something like 3ds Max to create the video, but I haven't.
Yeah, because that's something you really want to do. Is you don't want to just create a pretty picture in Twinmotions. You want to show what it's going to be like per the TIA at intersections and over a bridge and subdivision and stuff like that, and say, hey, this is per what it's going to be for the finished product, what the volume of traffic is going to look like. So
yep, absolutely. Just to give you a sense of scale, this company, I believe they're based out of Australia. Scan that real quick. Shows a little shows a video of what can be accomplished inside of Twinmotion and just the absolute scale. I forget what city, I think it's Adelaide, Australia, and it's just massive, right? And take a look at that video. It's really cool. All of this is photogrammetry. And I think the trees and the vehicles are animated from Twinmotion, but everything else is just photogrammetry captured, thrown in there. So just to recap, what we went over real quick was INFRAWORKS and connecting that, saving that up to Construction Cloud, aka Autodesk Docs, throwing some Revit content in there in the train station design, and of course throwing that all to Twinmotion for the visualization with the vehicle paths, painted vegetation, etc. All right, so all this is included in the AEC collection. If you aren't already using some of this, I highly recommend you do. A couple great resources here, some YouTube channels for the Autodesk infrastructure solutions, as well as Twinmotion, so be sure to check those out. So next steps, the resources, I can send Tony a copy of this presentation, the recording, of course, he's got that. Bundle all that stuff up, send it out to you. Feel free to connect with me if you have any questions about any of this stuff. If we haven't answered anything here particularly, certainly do that. Connect with me on LinkedIn. Also, I run a office hours session bi-weekly. We talked about bridge workflows just last week, so that would have tied in nicely to this particular session here with Twinmotion. But we're going to be taking a look at Twinmotion for buildings and infrastructure again later this year, and I promise infrastructure will not be the same as this one. So if you want to, I see Michelle says office hours is great, highly recommend. Thanks for the shout out, Michelle. Michelle's a regular on there. So yeah, feel free to reach out to me. I'll throw that registration in an email to Tony. He can send that out for you guys as well as a sort of a follow-up. With that, that's all I've got.
Yeah. I know you're a member in our platform. Can they reach out to you on there? I don't know how often you check it.
Dude, with all the social platforms, honestly, I don't.
Yeah.
LinkedIn is the best way to get in touch with me, honestly, if you want to do that, certainly.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Any other questions, before we jump off? I know everybody got, trying to get back to work here, but no, great stuff. Real quick question. Have y'all brought in, can you also bring in inventor parts into, right into
In the Twinmotion?
no, yeah, into Twinmotion, or did you ever take Inventor parts into INFRAWORKS and pushed it back out to Twinmotion?
Yeah, you can certainly do that, especially with bridge components for sure. Anything that INFRAWORKS can read as far as like a 3D model, DAE, OBJ, FBX, pretty sure Inventor can kick out to FBX. Haven't checked recently. Haven't been in Inventor in a while to really test that, but yeah, any of those types of files, even kicking it out from Inventor to Revit, which can be done, right? So take that Inventor to Revit to INFRAWORKS to Twinmotion. Either way, you can get there.
Well, cool, man. Appreciate you coming online and doing the presentation. And I'll post it on our platform and also link on our YouTube channel, the recording, once I do the quick little edits, and reach out to Matt on LinkedIn. Matt, I don't know if you want to put your email. It's up to you or not, but
yeah, let me do that real quick.
On the chat, if anybody wants to reach out to him if they have any questions about this.
Make sure I'm in.
Thanks for everyone that joining. The next webinar, I don't have any lined up. I'm going to take a break. There's no webinars next month. I got a lot of stuff going on next month. But the next one we have this month, let me look at our calendar. We do have a Cat After Dark tonight. We have a surveyor that's going to come online, talk about drone technology. So if you're online tonight at 7:30 or 6:30, let me go look, see what time it is. We are doing a Cat After Dark at 6:30, talk about drone technology. So Matt, if you're at home eating dinner. So yeah, I have a guy who does a lot of drones, and he's going to talk about his experience and journey using drone for surveying and stuff. So also the next one is, let's see, I'm doing a webinar next week to talk about parking design. So tomorrow, next week, I'm talking about the comparison doing parking layout with vehicle tracking, parking layout with the INFRAWORKS, and some of the tools in Civil 3D for parking. So if you want to join me to talk about parking design, I'll be doing a presentation about using all three products and doing a comparison about doing parking layouts and stuff like that. So,
hey, real quick, I don't know if anyone can see my email because it just said, to me it says hosts and panelists, but let me
put it in. Yeah, you might want to switch it over to everyone.
And I tried that, but I don't have that option, but there it is. Feel free to reach out if you have any questions.
All right, well, awesome. I appreciate your time, and have a great week, Matt, and stay in touch, and I will talk to you later. Thanks, everyone.
All right, take care, everyone.
Later.